I knew I was going to die when the arrow tore through my shoulder, not because of the wound. I had endured worse. A bullet through the thigh at 17, a knife to the ribs at 23, the scar across my jaw from a branding iron that slipped during a storm. Pain was an old companion, familiar as the calluses on my hands. No, what told me death had found me was the symbol carved into the arrow's shaft. 3 streaks of red paint, crude but deliberate, running parallel down the wood, and beneath them, burned black into the grain, a sun with rays that looked like claws reaching outward. The mark of Bosque Redondo, the mark of the people I had tried to forget for 19 years. The arrow jutted from my left shoulder, pinning my shirt to flesh. Blood spread warm across my chest, soaking through the cotton. I stood in the doorway of my barn, lantern swinging from the hook beside me, casting wild shadows across the dirt. The horses stamped and whinnied in their stalls, sensing violence the way animals do, smelling copper and fear in the air. I did not call out. There was no one to hear me. Red Creek Ranch sat 3 miles outside Ash Ridge, tucked against the foothills, where the land turned rocky and stubborn. I had chosen this isolation deliberately. After Lily died, I could not bear the sound of voices, the weight of sympathy in neighbors' eyes, the questions about when I would move on, when I would find another wife, when I would stop living like a ghost. So I became one. I gripped the arrow shaft with my right hand. The wood was smooth, freshly cut, the kind of craftsmanship that took patience. Whoever made this arrow had not been in a hurry. They had taken their time, selected the wood carefully, carved the symbol with precision. This was not a weapon of opportunity. This was a message. I pulled. The arrowhead resisted, barbed and cruel, designed to tear on exit. I gritted my teeth and yanked harder. Flesh ripped. Blood poured hot down my chest. The arrow came free with a wet sound that turned my stomach. I dropped it on the ground and pressed my hand over the wound, feeling the pulse of my own heartbeat against my palm. That was when I saw him. A figure stood at the edge of the lantern light, just beyond the barn doors. Tall, lean, wrapped in shadow. I could not see his face. He wore no mask, but the darkness clung to him like cloth. He did not move, did not speak, just stood there watching me bleed. My rifle leaned against the wall, 5 feet away. I took a step toward it. The figure did not react. Another step, still nothing. I lunged for the gun, swung it up, finger on the trigger. He was already gone. I scanned the yard, chest heaving, blood slicking my hand. Nothing, no movement, no sound except the wind and the frightened horses. I limped forward into the dirt, rifle raised, sweeping left to right. The night pressed in around me, thick and absolute. The moon was a sliver, offering no help. Then I saw it. Another arrow, planted in the dirt directly in front of my porch steps. This one stood upright, quivering slightly in the breeze. A piece of cloth was tied around the shaft. I approached slowly, rifle still leveled at the darkness. When I reached the arrow, I crouched, ignoring the fresh wave of pain in my shoulder, and pulled the cloth free. It was doeskin, soft and old, stained dark in places. Symbols were painted across it in faded red. I did not recognize all of them, but I recognized enough. Apache symbols, the language of a people I had tried to erase from my memory, and written in English, in charcoal, 4 words. You are number 3. My blood went cold. Number 3. 2 others had already died. I stood, legs unsteady, and looked out at the land that had been my refuge for 3 years. The ranch house sat dark and silent behind me. The barn doors hung open, lanterns still swinging. Beyond the fence line, the scrub stretched away toward the hills, black on black. Somewhere out there, in that darkness, someone was hunting. Hunting men who had been at Bosque Redondo. Hunting me. I stumbled back to the house, one hand clamped over my shoulder, the other gripping the rifle. Inside, I barred the door, lit every lamp, and sat at the kitchen table with the doeskin cloth spread before me. Blood dripped onto the wood, pooling around the edge of the fabric. I had not thought about Bosque Redondo in years. I had buried it deep, covered it with work and whiskey and the memory of Lily's face. But graves do not hold forever. especially graves filled with the kind of sins I had committed. I opened the cabinet beneath the sink and pulled out a wooden box, small and plain, the kind used for nails or buttons. I had not touched it since the day Lily died. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a necklace, bone beads carved from deer strung on sinew, simple, old, and hanging from the center, a small pendant shaped like a sun with reaching rays, the same symbol from the arrow. I had carried this necklace for 19 years without knowing why. A woman had given it to me on the worst day of my life, pressed it into my hand with fingers that shook, her eyes full of something I could not name. Gratitude, maybe, or a curse. I had taken it, shoved it in my pocket, and never looked at it again until I was hundreds of miles away from New Mexico, trying to sleep in a boarding house that smelled like mildew and cheap tobacco. I had wanted to throw it away, wanted to bury it or burn it or drop it in a river, but I could not. Some part of me, the part that still had a conscience, knew that this necklace was a debt, a reminder that I owed something I could never repay. Now, sitting in my kitchen with blood drying on my shirt, I stared at the necklace and understood. The woman who gave me this had not forgiven me. She had marked me. And now, 19 years later, someone was collecting. I did not sleep that night. I sat in the chair by the window, rifle across my lap, watching the darkness for movement. My shoulder throbbed, a deep, relentless ache that pulsed with every heartbeat. I had bandaged it as best I could, using strips torn from an old sheet and a bottle of whiskey poured directly into the wound. The pain had been blinding, but I did not cry out. I had learned long ago how to suffer in silence. As the hours passed, I thought about the two men who had died before me. I did not know their names. I had not kept in touch with anyone from my unit. After the war ended, after I left the Army, I had severed every connection to that life, changed my name from Brennan to Hartwell, moved west, married Lily, and built this ranch with my own hands. I had thought distance and time would be enough. I had been wrong. When dawn finally broke, pale and gray, I stood and walked to the door. My legs were stiff, my shoulders screaming. I opened the door slowly, rifle ready, and stepped out onto the porch. The arrow was still there, planted in the dirt like a headstone. I pulled it free and carried it inside. On the table, I laid the two arrows side by side. Identical craftsmanship, identical symbols. Whoever was doing this had made them both, along with the one that had gone into my shoulder. That meant planning, resources, time, and most importantly, knowledge. Whoever was hunting me knew exactly who I was and what I had done. I wrapped the arrows in cloth, placed them in the box with the necklace, and locked it in the cabinet. Then I went to the mirror above the wash basin and looked at myself. Pale skin, dark circles under my eyes, stubble that had gone gray at the edges. I was 36 years old and looked 50. Lily used to tell me I was handsome, used to run her fingers through my hair and smile like she meant it. But Lily had been kind, too kind, the kind of woman who saw good in people even when there was none to find. She had loved me without knowing what I had done, without knowing the blood on my hands. If she had known, she would not have touched me. I turned away from the mirror and dressed in clean clothes, moving slowly to avoid tearing the bandage. Then I saddled my horse, a roan gelding named Dust, and rode toward Ash Ridge. The town sat in a valley between two low hills, built around a single main street lined with wooden buildings that leaned slightly in the wind. A general store, a blacksmith, a saloon with doors that never closed, and at the far end, the sheriff's office, a squat structure with bars on the windows and a faded sign that read, Law. I tied Dust to the rail outside and stepped onto the boardwalk. A few people moved along the street, heads down, going about their business. No one looked at me. I preferred it that way. Inside the sheriff's office, a man sat behind a desk, boots propped up, hat tilted over his eyes. He did not move when the door opened. Ben Torres, 50 years old, half Mexican, half something else he never talked about. He had been sheriff of Ash Ridge for 12 years, ever since the last one drank himself to death. Torres was not a friendly man, but he was fair. He enforced the law without favor, which meant he had no friends and plenty of enemies. I respected that. I cleared my throat. Torres tilted his hat back and looked at me with dark, unreadable eyes. "You look like hell, Brennan." "I know." He swung his boots off the desk and sat up, studying my face. "You get that shoulder looked at?" "I will." Torres leaned back in his chair, fingers laced behind his head. "You hear about the letter I sent?" "I am." He nodded slowly. "Then you know 2 men are dead. Billy Rourke, shot through the heart with an arrow while sleeping in his bed. Frank Hayes, found in the woods with his throat cut and an arrow pinned to his chest. Both arrows had the same symbol. Both men served in the same unit at Bosque Redondo in 1864. I said nothing. Torres watched me. "You were there too, were you not?" "I was." "Then you are on the list. I know." Torres stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. He stared out at the street, silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "My brother was Apache, half-brother, same mother. He died at Bosque Redondo, not in the fighting. After, during the march to the reservation, starved to death on the way." I swallowed hard. "I am sorry." Torres turned to face me. "Are you?" I did not answer. What could I say? That I was sorry for his brother, but not sorry enough to have done anything about it? That I had stood by and watched people suffer because I was too afraid to disobey orders? Torres crossed his arms. "I do not care about your guilt, Brennan. I care about stopping whoever is killing these men. Do you know who it might be?" I shook my head. "I do not." He studied me, eyes narrowed. "You are lying." "I am not." "I do not know who is doing this, but I know why." Torres waited. I took a breath, the wound in my shoulder throbbing. "Because we were there. Because we did things that cannot be undone, and someone wants us to pay." Torres nodded slowly. "Justice or revenge? I do not know if there is a difference." "There is," Torres said. "Justice follows the law. Revenge does not care." He walked back to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He handed it to me. I opened it and read. It was a list. Names. 12 of them. Men who had served at Bosque Redondo. 2 were crossed out in red ink. Billy Rourke, Frank Hayes, my name was 3rd. Below mine were 9 others, including one that made my stomach turn. Captain Silas Crow. I looked up at Torres. "Crow is still alive?" Torres nodded. "He is an Indian agent now, works out of Santa Fe. I sent him a letter 2 weeks ago. He has not replied." "Because he does not care," I said. Crow never cared about anything except his orders. Torres took the list back and folded it carefully. "If you see anything, hear anything, you come to me. Do not try to handle this yourself." "I will. I mean it, Brennan. I do not want more bodies. I understand." Torres walked me to the door. Before I left, he said, "One more thing." I turned. "Whoever is doing this, they are not killing randomly. They are working their way down the list in order. That means you have time." "Not much, but some." "How much?" Torres shrugged. "Billy Rourke died 2 weeks ago. Frank Hayes died 1 week ago. If the pattern holds, you have 2 days." I nodded and stepped outside. The sun was higher now, bright and harsh. I untied dust and swung into the saddle, wincing as the movement pulled at my shoulder. I was about to ride off when I heard a voice. "You looking for supplies?" I turned. A man stood in the doorway of the general store, thin and balding, wiping his hands on an apron. I did not recognize him. "Depends," I said. "You selling?" The man grinned, showing gaps where teeth should have been. "Always selling. Come on in." I hesitated. I had not planned to stop, had only come to see Torres, but I needed ammunition, bandages, maybe something for the pain. I dismounted and followed the man inside. The store smelled like sawdust and coffee. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with canned goods, tools, fabric. In the corner, a woman stood with her back to me, sorting through a box of something I could not see. She did not turn around. The shopkeeper led me to the counter. What do you need? Ammunition, .45 caliber, bandages, whiskey. He nodded and started pulling items from the shelves. As he worked, I glanced around the room. The woman in the corner had moved slightly. I could see her profile now. Dark hair, thin frame. She wore a dress that looked too big, hanging loose around her shoulders. That will be $3, the shopkeeper said, setting the items on the counter. I reached for my coin purse and froze. The woman had turned. She was looking directly at me, and around her neck, hanging on a piece of sinew, was a bone necklace identical to the one I had hidden in my cabinet, the same sun symbol, the same carved rays. My heart stopped. She did not smile, did not speak, just stared at me with eyes that held something I had seen once before, 19 years ago, in the face of a woman who had given me a necklace and told me I owed a debt. Hatred. The shopkeeper cleared his throat. "You all right, mister?" I forced myself to look away from the woman. "I am fine." I paid, gathered the supplies, and walked out without looking back. But I could feel her eyes on me, burning into my back like a brand. Outside, I stood on the boardwalk, breathing hard. My hands shook as I tied the supplies to Dust's saddle. I told myself to leave, to ride back to the ranch and forget what I had just seen. But I could not. I turned and walked back inside. The woman was gone. I looked at the shopkeeper. Where did she go? Who? The woman. The one in the corner. He frowned. There was no woman in here. I stared at him. She was right there. Dark hair. Bone necklace. The shopkeeper shook his head. "You are the only customer I have had all morning." I left without another word. I rode back to the ranch in a daze, my mind racing. Had I imagined her? Was the blood loss making me see things? Or had she been real, and the shopkeeper was lying? By the time I reached the ranch, the sun was high and hot. I dismounted, unsaddled Dust, and led him into the barn. As I filled his trough with water, I noticed something on the ground near the door. Footprints. Small. Barefoot. Fresh. Someone had been here. I followed the prints across the yard toward the house. They stopped at the porch steps. I climbed onto the porch and tried the door. It was unlocked. I always locked it. I drew my pistol and pushed the door open slowly. The house was silent. I stepped inside, moving carefully, scanning every corner. Nothing seemed disturbed. The table, the chairs, the shelves, all exactly as I had left them. Then I saw it. On the table, placed carefully in the center, was the wooden box I had locked in the cabinet, the box that held the necklace and the arrows. It was open. The necklace was gone. In its place, laid out in a perfect line, were 3 objects. The 2 arrows I had collected, and a small piece of cloth, doeskin, painted with symbols. I picked up the cloth and unfolded it. More symbols, more words in charcoal. But this time, the message was different. "You saved me once. Now I will give you a choice." I sank into the chair, staring at the cloth. My shoulder throbbed. My head pounded. I did not understand. Saved who? When? And then, like a door opening in my mind, the memory came flooding back. Bosque Redondo, 1864. The smell of smoke and gunpowder, the screams of women and children, the crackle of burning tents, and a little girl, maybe 7 years old, trapped inside a burning shelter crying for her mother. I had pulled her out, carried her through the flames, handed her to another woman who was running, fleeing the soldiers. I had not stayed to see what happened next. I had returned to my unit, to my orders, to the killing. But the woman, the one I had given the child to, had pressed something into my hand before she ran. Half of a necklace. And now, 19 years later, that child had found me. She was the woman in the store, the one with the bone necklace, the one who had been here, in my house, leaving me this message. I looked down at the cloth again. "You saved me once. Now I will give you a choice." What choice? I did not have to wait long for the answer. The next morning, I rode back into Ash Ridge. Not to see Torres, not to buy supplies, to find her. I went to the general store first. The shopkeeper was there, sweeping the floor. He looked up when I entered. "Can I help you?" "The woman from yesterday," I said. "Where is she?" I told you there was no woman. I stepped closer. Do not lie to me. He stopped sweeping. His face hardened. I do not know what you are talking about. I turned and left. I checked the saloon, the boarding house, the church. No one had seen her. No one knew her. It was as if she did not exist. Finally, I went to the edge of town, where the road split toward the cattle pens and the holding corrals. A place I had not been in 3 years. A place I had avoided because I could not stand the smell, the sound, the sight of living things caged and sold. And there she was, behind a wooden gate, chained at the wrists, standing in the dirt like livestock. She was not alone. 3 other women stood with her, all Apache, all chained. Men walked past, examining them, discussing prices. A man with a clipboard stood nearby, calling out bids. I walked closer, my heart pounding. She saw me. Her eyes locked onto mine. No fear, no pleading, just recognition. And then, slowly, she smiled. Not a kind smile. Not a grateful smile. A smile that said, I have been waiting for you. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring the shouts, and reached the gate. The man with the clipboard stepped in front of me. You buying? I looked past him, at the woman. She had not moved, had not looked away. How much? I asked. The man grinned. For her? $60. She is young, strong, good worker. I pulled out my coin purse and counted out the money. The man took it, unlocked the chain from the post, and handed me the end. She is yours. I took the chain and looked at her. She looked back. And in that moment, I knew. This was not a rescue. This was the beginning of something I could not control. I did not speak to her on the ride back to the ranch. I did not know what to say. The chain linking her wrists hung between us, a physical reminder of the transaction that had just taken place. I had bought her freedom, or so I told myself, but freedom bought with money is not really freedom. It is just a different kind of cage. She sat behind me on dust, her body tense, not touching me more than necessary. I could feel her breathing, steady and controlled, the kind of breathing that comes from years of practice at hiding fear. Or perhaps she was not afraid. Perhaps she was waiting. The town fell away behind us. The road narrowed, dust rising in small clouds from dust's hooves. The sun climbed higher, turning the air thick and heavy. My shoulder ached with every movement, the bandage underneath my shirt already soaked through with fresh blood. I had not changed it, had not had time, had not cared. When we reached the ranch, I dismounted slowly, every muscle protesting. She slid off the horse without help, landing lightly on bare feet. I noticed then that she had no shoes. Her feet were calloused and scarred, the feet of someone who had walked long distances over rough ground. I led Dust to the barn and unsaddled him. She followed at a distance, watching me work, saying nothing. When I finished, I turned to face her. The chain still hung from her wrists. I had forgotten about it, or perhaps I had not wanted to think about it. Now, seeing it in the daylight, I felt a wave of shame so strong it made my stomach turn. I pulled a key from my pocket. The man with the clipboard had given it to me, tossed it into my hand like it was nothing. I stepped toward her, and she did not move, did not flinch. I unlocked the shackles and let them fall to the ground. She rubbed her wrists where the metal had cut into skin. Dark bruises circled both arms. She looked at me, and I looked back, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. Finally I said, "You can go." She tilted her head slightly, as if considering. Then she said, in perfect English, "Where would I go?" Her voice was low, steady, without accent. It startled me. I had expected broken English, or none at all, but she spoke like someone who had been taught carefully by someone who valued language. "I do not know," I said. "Wherever you want." She looked around the ranch, the house, the barn, the dry fields stretching toward the hills. Then she looked back at me. "You do not know why I am here, do you?" I hesitated. "I think I do," she smiled, that same cold smile from the cattle pen. "No, you do not." She walked past me, into the barn, and I followed. She moved with purpose, like she knew where she was going, even though she had never been here before. She stopped in front of the stall where I kept my supplies, tools, rope, the wooden box. She pointed to the box. "Open it." I did not move. "How do you know about that?" "Because I was here yesterday. I told you. I left you a message." I opened the box. The 2 arrows were still inside. The cloth was gone. She reached in and picked up one of the arrows, turning it over in her hands. "You kept these." "I did." "Why?" "Because I needed to understand." She looked at me. "Understand what?" "Who is killing the men from Bosque Redondo?" She set the arrow down carefully. "You think I am doing it?" "Are you?" She laughed, a short, bitter sound. "No, but I know who is." I waited. She crossed her arms. "My name is Ayanna. In my language it means eternal blossom. My mother chose it because she wanted me to survive, to bloom even in the worst soil." I did not know what to say. She continued, 19 years ago you pulled me out of a burning tent. My mother was inside. She was fighting a soldier. He shot her. You did not stop him." I swallowed hard. I could not. Ayanna's eyes narrowed. "You could have, but you were afraid. Afraid of being punished. Afraid of dying." She was right. I had been afraid. I still was. She stepped closer. The woman who took me, who raised me, was my mother's sister, my aunt. She kept me alive, taught me English, taught me how to survive in a world that wanted me dead. She also taught me to remember, to never forget what was done to us. "I am sorry," I said, and the words felt hollow. Ayanna shook her head. "Your apology means nothing. My mother is still dead. My aunt is dead. Everyone I loved is dead. Sorry does not bring them back." "Then why are you here?" I asked. "Why did you let me buy you? Why did you come to this ranch?" "Because I need you." "For what?" She walked to the barn door and looked out at the land. "There is a man, a soldier, the one who shot my mother. He is still alive." I already knew who she meant. Silas Crow. Ayanna turned back to me. "My cousin Dakota is hunting him. He has been killing the men from your unit, one by one, working his way down a list. But Dakota does not know which one pulled the trigger. He only knows they were all there." "And you do know?" I said. "Yes." "Because my aunt told me before she died. She saw it happen. She remembered his face. She described him to me, Silas Crow." Ayanna nodded. "But Dakota will not stop with Crow. He will kill every man on that list until he is certain he has the right one, including you." My chest tightened. "So you are here to save me?" She laughed again, colder this time. "No, I am here to use you." I stared at her. "You are going to help me stop Dakota, and then you are going to help me bring Silas Crow to justice. Why would I do that? Because if you do not, Dakota will kill you in 2 days, and if he does not, I will." The words hung in the air between us. I believed her. I believed every word. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. Ayanna walked back to the box and picked up the second arrow. "We are going to find Dakota. We are going to convince him to stop. And then we are going to make Silas Crow confess to what he did." "How?" She looked at me with eyes that had seen too much suffering, too much loss. "By making him face the truth, in front of everyone, in a courtroom." "You think anyone will care?" I asked. "You think a judge will convict a white man for killing an Apache woman 19 years ago?" Ayanna's jaw tightened. "They will if you testify." I felt the ground shift beneath me. If I testify, I will be admitting I was there, that I was part of it. Yes, I will go to prison. Maybe. And you are asking me to do this anyway. She stepped closer, so close I could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes. "I am not asking. I am telling you. You owe my mother. You owe me. And this is how you pay." I wanted to argue, wanted to tell her it was not that simple, that the world did not work the way she thought it did, but I could not. Because she was right. I did owe her. I owed her mother. I owed every person who had died at Bosque Redondo while I stood by and did nothing. "All right," I said, "I will help you." Ayana nodded once, as if she had never doubted my answer. "Good. Then we start now." She walked out of the barn, and I followed her into the sunlight. My shoulder burned, my head throbbed. But for the first time in 19 years, I felt something other than guilt. I felt purpose. That night, Ayana refused to sleep in the house. She said she did not trust walls, did not trust locked doors. Instead, she made a bed in the barn using old blankets and hay. I brought her food, bread, and dried meat, and a tin cup of water. She took them without thanks. I sat on a bale of hay across from her, watching as she ate. She did not eat quickly, did not devour the food like someone starving. She ate slowly, carefully, as if savoring each bite. When she finished, she looked at me. "You said you could not save my mother. Why?" I had known this question was coming. I had been preparing for it since the moment I saw her in the cattle pen. Because Captain Crow had already pulled the trigger. By the time I reached the tent, she was dying. There was nothing I could do. Ayana's face did not change. "You did not try." "No, I did not." She nodded slowly. "At least you are honest." I stood to leave, but she spoke again. "One more thing." I turned. "The necklace you have been carrying, the one my aunt gave you, do you still have it?" I nodded. "Bring it to me." I went to the house, retrieved the necklace from the cabinet, and brought it back to the barn. I handed it to her. She held it up to the lantern light, studying the carved sun pendant. "My mother made 2 of these," she said, "one for me, one for the man who saved me. My aunt gave you hers. She told me it meant you were not like the others, that you had a debt, but also a chance." "A chance for what?" "To do better." She placed the necklace around her own neck so that the 2 pendants hung side by side. Then she lay down on the blankets and turned her back to me. I left her there and walked back to the house. Inside, I lit a single lamp and sat at the table. My shoulder throbbed. My mind raced. I thought about Dakota, somewhere out in the darkness, hunting men like me. I thought about Silas Crow, living his life unpunished. I thought about Lily and what she would say if she knew what I was about to do. She would have told me to do the right thing. She always did. I just hoped I still knew what that was. The next morning, I woke to the sound of hooves. Not close, but not far either. I grabbed my rifle and went to the window. In the distance, near the tree line, I saw a figure on horseback, tall, unmoving, watching. Dakota. I stepped outside, rifle in hand. Ayana was already there, standing in the yard, staring at the distant rider. She did not seem surprised. "He has been watching all night," she said. "Why does he not attack?" "Because he's waiting." "For what?" "For me to leave." I looked at her. "You are bait." She nodded. "He knows I would not stay with you unless I had a reason. He is trying to understand what that reason is. And when he figures it out, then he will decide whether to kill you or listen to me." I lowered the rifle. "What do you want me to do?" "Nothing. Let me handle him." She walked toward the tree line slowly, hands at her sides. I watched her go, every instinct telling me to follow, to protect her. But I stayed. This was not my fight. Not yet. She reached the trees and disappeared into the shadows. For a long time there was nothing. No sound, no movement. Then I heard voices, low and sharp, speaking in Apache. I could not understand the words, but I understood the tone. Anger, accusation, defense. The voices stopped. Ayana emerged from the trees alone. She walked back to the ranch, her face unreadable. "What did he say?" I asked. "He said, I am a traitor, that I have forgotten my people." "And what did you say?" "That I have not forgotten, but I will not let him kill an innocent man." "I am not innocent." She looked at me. "I know, but you are not guilty of the crime he thinks you committed, and that matters." She walked past me into the barn. I stood in the yard, staring at the trees where Dakota had been. He was gone now, but I knew he would be back. 2 days, Ayana had said. I had 2 days to stop a man from killing me, and 2 days to decide if I was brave enough to face the truth I had been running from for 19 years. The sun had not yet cleared the horizon when Ayana woke me. I had fallen asleep in the chair by the window, rifle still across my lap, my body stiff and aching. She stood in the doorway, barefoot and silent as a shadow. "We need to leave," she said. I sat up, wincing, as pain shot through my shoulder. "Leave? Where?" "To find Dakota before he finds you." I looked past her, out the window. The yard was empty, the trees beyond still dark with pre-dawn shadow. "I do not see him." "He is there," she said. "He has been circling the ranch all night. He will not wait much longer." I stood slowly, every joint protesting. My shoulder had bled through the bandage again, the cloth stuck to my skin. I needed to change it, clean the wound, but there was no time. Ayana was already moving, gathering supplies from the kitchen: bread, dried meat, a canteen of water. "What makes you think he will listen to you?" I asked. "Because I am the only family he has left. And because he knows that if he kills you, he kills the only witness who can prove Silas Crow murdered my mother." I pulled on my coat, checked my rifle, and followed her outside. The air was cold, sharp with the smell of sagebrush and distant rain. Dust stood in the corral, already saddled. Ayana had done it while I slept. "You know how to ride?" I asked. She gave me a look that made me feel foolish. I was riding before I could walk. We mounted, Ayana behind me, her arms around my waist. I could feel the tension in her body, coiled and ready. We rode east, toward the hills where the land turned rocky and the trees grew thick enough to hide a man. The ride was silent except for the rhythm of hooves on hard ground. I kept scanning the ridgeline, looking for movement, for the glint of sunlight on metal, for anything that might tell me where Dakota was hiding. But there was nothing, just stone and scrub and the endless empty sky. After an hour, Ayana tapped my shoulder. "Stop here." I reined in dust. We were in a narrow canyon, walls of red rock rising on either side. A dry stream bed ran down the center, scattered with smooth stones. It was a good place for an ambush. "Why here?" I asked. "Because this is where he will come." "How do you know?" She slid off the horse and walked to the center of the canyon. "Because this is where my aunt died." I dismounted and followed her. She stood in the middle of the stream bed, looking at something I could not see. Then she knelt and brushed away loose dirt, revealing a small pile of stones arranged in a circle. In the center was a single white feather. "My aunt built this," Ayana said. "A marker. She died here 10 years ago, trying to escape soldiers who were rounding up Apache for the reservation. Dakota found her body 3 days later. He comes here every year. And you think he will come today?" "I know he will, because I told him to." "When?" "Last night, when I spoke with him." I looked at her, understanding slowly. "You planned this." She stood, brushing dirt from her hands. "I planned everything. From the moment I saw you at the cattle pen, I knew what I needed you to do, and I knew Dakota would follow. So I am bait." "You are a witness," she said. "The only one who can give Dakota what he needs, which is the truth." Before I could respond, I heard the scrape of boots on stone. I spun, raising my rifle, but Ayana put her hand on the barrel and pushed it down. "Do not," she said. A man stepped out from behind a boulder at the canyon entrance. Tall, lean, with long black hair tied back and a face carved from the same hard stone as the canyon walls. He wore buckskin pants and a dark shirt, and in his hands he carried a bow, arrow already nocked. Dakota. He did not point the arrow at me, not yet, but I could see his fingers on the string, ready to draw. His eyes moved from Ayana to me and back again. He spoke in Apache, his voice low and angry. Ayana answered in the same language, her tone firm but not hostile. They went back and forth, the words sharp and quick. I understood none of it, but I understood the emotion. Accusation, defense, grief. Finally, Dakota switched to English. His voice was rough, like he did not use the language often. "You bring him here, to this place." Ayana did not flinch. "I bring him here because you need to hear what he has to say. I do not need to hear anything from a white soldier. He is not a soldier anymore. He is a rancher. And he saved my life." Dakota's jaw tightened. "He saved you so white men could take everything else. He saved me because he saw a child in danger and acted. That is more than most men would have done. It is not enough." Ayanna stepped forward. "I know it is not enough. Nothing will ever be enough. But killing him will not bring back my mother. It will not bring back your mother. It will only add more blood to ground that is already soaked with it." Dakota looked at me, his eyes cold and measuring. "He is on the list. He was at Bosque Redondo. That makes him guilty. He is guilty of many things," Ayanna said, "but he is not guilty of the crime you are punishing him for. He did not kill my mother. Silas Crow did." Dakota's expression did not change. "How do you know?" "Because my aunt told me. She saw it happen. She gave me his name before she died." Dakota lowered the bow slightly. "Then I will kill Crow." "No," Ayanna said. "We will bring him to justice, real justice, in a courtroom, with witnesses and evidence and a judge." Dakota laughed, a bitter sound. "White man's justice, that has worked so well for us." "It is better than this," Ayanna said, gesturing to the canyon, to the graves, to the endless cycle of violence. "If you kill Crow, they will hunt you. They will kill you. And then what? Who carries on? Who remembers?" Dakota was silent for a long moment. Then he looked at me. "What do you say, white man? Do you think I should trust your courts?" I stepped forward, ignoring the way his hand tightened on the bow. "I think you have every reason not to trust them. But I also think Ayanna is right. If you kill Crow, you die. And if you die, no one learns the truth. No one knows what happened to your people. To her mother. To all of them." "And you will testify? You will stand in front of white men and tell them what Crow did?" "I will, even if it means you go to prison, even then." Dakota studied me, his eyes searching for deception. I held his gaze, letting him see whatever he needed to see. Finally, he lowered the bow completely. "I will not kill you today," he said. "But if you lie, if you run, if you betray her, I will find you. And I will make you wish you had died at Bosque Redondo. I understand." He turned to Ayanna. "You have 2 weeks. If Crow is not in a courtroom by then, I will finish what I started." Ayanna nodded. 2 weeks. Dakota walked past us, pausing only to touch the circle of stones where his mother had died. Then he disappeared into the rocks as silently as he had come. I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. Ayanna looked at me. "Now comes the hard part," she said. We rode back to the ranch in silence. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what had just happened and what it meant. I had agreed to testify against Silas Crow. I had agreed to stand up in a courtroom and admit that I had been at Bosque Redondo, that I had witnessed a murder, that I had done nothing to stop it. I would lose everything. My freedom. My land. Possibly my life. But what choice did I have? If I refused, Dakota would kill me. And even if he did not, I would spend the rest of my days knowing I had chosen cowardice again, just as I had 19 years ago. When we reached the ranch, the sun was high and brutal. I unsaddled Dust and led him to water while Ayanna went into the house. When I followed her inside, I found her standing at the kitchen table, staring at a piece of paper. "What is that?" I asked. She handed it to me. It was a letter addressed to me, written in a precise, formal hand. "Mr. Brennan, it has come to my attention that you are harboring a fugitive Apache woman on your property. As an Indian agent operating under federal authority, I am obligated to inform you that this woman is the property of the United States government and must be returned to the reservation immediately. You have 48 hours to comply. Failure to do so will result in your arrest and prosecution under federal law. Respectfully, Captain Silas Crow, Bureau of Indian Affairs." I looked at Ayanna. "When did this come?" "It was nailed to the door this morning, before we left." My blood ran cold. "He knows you are here." "Of course he knows. He has known since the moment you bought me at the cattle pen. He probably has men watching this ranch. Then we do not have 2 weeks, we have 2 days. Ayanna shook her head. "We do not even have that. If Crow is coming here, he will bring soldiers. And once they take me, you will never see me again. Then we leave. Now. We ride to Santa Fe, find the nearest judge, and force Crow to answer for what he did. She looked at me like I was a child. It does not work that way. We need evidence. We need witnesses. We need a sheriff willing to make the arrest. We have a sheriff. Ben Torres. Will he help us? I hesitated. Torres had lost his brother at Bosque Redondo. He had every reason to want justice, but he was also a man who followed the law, even when the law was unjust. I do not know, I admitted, but he is the only chance we have. Then we go to him. Today. We rode into Ash Ridge an hour later, pushing dust hard. The town was busier than I had seen it in months. Wagons crowding the main street, people moving in and out of shops. It felt wrong. All this normalcy while my world was collapsing. We tied dust outside the sheriff's office and went inside. Torres was at his desk, reading a newspaper. He looked up when we entered, his eyes moving from me to Ayanna and back again. I heard you bought yourself a companion, Brennan. She is not my companion. She is a witness. Torres folded the newspaper carefully. A witness to what? To murder. He leaned back in his chair. Whose murder? Her mother, killed by Captain Silas Crow at Bosque Redondo in 1864. Torres was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "That is a serious accusation. It is the truth. Can you prove it?" "I can testify. I was there. I saw it happen." Torres stood and walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "You understand what you are saying. If you testify, you are admitting you were part of what happened at Bosque Redondo. You will be charged as an accomplice. I know." He turned to face me. "And you are willing to do that?" "I am." Torres looked at Ayanna. "What about you? Are you willing to stand in front of a courtroom full of white men and tell them what happened?" She met his gaze without fear. "I am." Torres nodded slowly. "All right, I will help you. But we do this by the book. No vigilante justice. No revenge killings. We build a case, we present it to a judge, and we let the law decide." "Agreed," I said. He pulled out a chair. "Sit down, both of you, and start from the beginning." We talked for 2 hours. I told Torres everything I remembered about Bosque Redondo, the orders we had been given, the way Crow had led us into the Apache camp, the burning tents, the screaming, the woman with the knife who had fought back. Ayanna filled in the gaps, her mother's name, Kai, her age, 28, the fact that she had been 3 months pregnant when she died, the way her aunt had carried Ayanna for 3 days through the desert to escape the soldiers. Torres took notes, his face expressionless. When we finished, he set down his pen. "This is enough to bring charges," he said. "But Crow is a federal agent. I cannot arrest him without authorization from a judge, and no judge in Santa Fe is going to issue a warrant based on the testimony of an Apache woman and a confessed accomplice." "Then what do we do?" I asked. Torres stood and walked to a filing cabinet. He pulled out a folder and opened it on the desk. Inside were pages of handwritten notes, dates, names, locations. "I have been investigating Bosque Redondo for 10 years, he said, "since my brother died. I have statements from survivors. I have reports from soldiers who witnessed atrocities. I have enough evidence to prove that what happened there was not war. It was slaughter." He looked at me. "What I do not have is someone willing to testify in court. Everyone is too afraid, too broken, or too dead." "Until now," I said. "Until now." He closed the folder. "I will contact Judge Harold Pitts. He is old, stubborn, and he does not like Indian agents. If anyone will issue a warrant, it is him. But it will take time." "How much time?" "A week, maybe 2. "We do not have 2 weeks, Ayanna said. "Crow is coming for me in 2 days. Torres frowned. "How do you know?" She handed him the letter. He read it, his expression darkening. "Damn," he muttered. "He is moving faster than I thought." "Can you stop him?" I asked. "Not legally. He has federal authority. If he shows up with soldiers, I have to let them take her. Then we hide her." "Where?" Torres asked. "Crow knows this town. He knows everyone in it. There is nowhere you can hide her that he will not find." Ayanna spoke quietly. "Then I will turn myself in." We both stared at her. "No," I said, "absolutely not." She looked at me calmly. "If I turn myself in, Crow will think he has won. He will let his guard down. And that is when we strike." "With what?" Torres asked. "I do not have a warrant. I do not have authority to arrest him." "Then we do not arrest him," Ayanna said. "We expose him, publicly, in front of the whole town." "How?" She smiled. And for the first time, I saw something fierce and dangerous in her eyes. "We make him confess." The plan was insane. I told Ayanna that the moment Torres left the room to send a telegram to Judge Pitts. She listened patiently, then said, "Do you have a better idea?" I did not. The plan was this. Ayanna would allow herself to be taken by Crow. She would be transported back to the reservation, or so Crow would think. But along the way, we would stage a confrontation, a public one, in front of witnesses, journalists, anyone who could spread the word of what Crow had done. "And how exactly do we make him confess?" I asked. "We do not," she said. "You do." I stared at her. "You want me to confront him? I want you to tell the truth, in front of everyone, about what you saw, what he did. He will deny it. Then we make him prove it. How?" She pulled something from her pocket, a small leather pouch worn and stained. She opened it and poured the contents onto Torres's desk. Bone beads, a carved pendant, the necklace her mother had worn. "My aunt took this from my mother's body," Ayanna said. "She kept it for 19 years. And 3 months ago, she gave it to me and told me who killed my mother." "That is not evidence," I said. "That is just a necklace." Ayanna shook her head. "Look closer." I picked up the pendant. It was carved with the same sun symbol I had seen before, but there was something else. A mark on the back burned into the bone. Letters, initials, S.C. Silas Crow. "My mother was wearing this when she died," Ayanna said. "Crow took it from her body. He wore it as a trophy. My aunt saw him wearing it 2 years later, when she was captured and taken to the reservation. She stole it back." I looked up at her. "This proves he knew your mother, but it does not prove he killed her. It proves he lied," she said, "because when we confront him, he will say he never saw my mother. He will say he does not know who she was, and then we show him this." "And what happens when he claims he found it, or bought it, or was given it by someone else?" Ayanna's eyes hardened. "Then you tell them what you saw, and you make them believe you." Torres returned an hour later with news. Judge Pitts had agreed to review the case, but he needed time, at least a week, to gather evidence and prepare a formal hearing. "We do not have a week," I said. "I know," Torres replied, "which is why I am proposing something highly illegal. I am listening." He pulled out a map and spread it on the desk. "Tomorrow morning, Crow will arrive with a detachment of soldiers to collect Ayanna. He will take the main road north toward the reservation. But there is another route, a canyon pass that cuts through the hills. If we can force him to take that route, we can intercept him." "Intercept him how?" Torres looked at me. "By blocking the road, and by having a very public conversation about Bosque Redondo." "You mean an ambush?" "I mean a confrontation, with witnesses." "Who are these witnesses?" Torres smiled grimly. "Every reporter within 50 miles. I have already sent telegrams to 3 newspapers. They will be very interested in a story about a federal agent accused of murder. And if Crow refuses to talk, then we make it impossible for him to refuse." The next morning, I stood on the porch of my ranch and watched the dust rise in the distance. A column of riders, moving fast. 6 men, maybe 7. Leading them was a figure I recognized even from a distance. Tall, straight-backed, wearing a dark coat and a wide-brimmed hat. Silas Crow. Ayanna stood beside me, calm and still. She had dressed in the same buckskin dress she had worn the day I found her, the one that marked her as Apache. She wanted Crow to see exactly who she was. "Are you ready?" I asked. "I have been ready for 19 years." The riders reached the ranch and stopped at the gate. Crow dismounted slowly, deliberately, like a man who had all the time in the world. He was older than I remembered, his face lined and weathered, but his eyes were the same, cold, calculating, empty of doubt. He walked toward the porch, his men fanning out behind him. None of them drew weapons, but their hands rested on their belts, ready. Crow stopped 10 feet away and looked at me. "Brennan," he said, "it has been a long time, not long enough." He smiled, a thin, cruel expression. "I see you have been keeping company with fugitives. She is not a fugitive. I paid for her release. You paid a drunk for a piece of paper that has no legal standing. She is still property of the federal government. She is a human being." Crow's smile faded. "That is not for you to decide. Now step aside and let me do my job." I did not move. "Your job is to enforce the law, not to murder unarmed women." His eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "You heard me." Crow looked at Ayanna. "Is that what she told you? That I killed someone?" "That is what I saw," I said. "At Bosque Redondo, 1864, you shot a woman named Kai. She was unarmed. She was pregnant. And you killed her in cold blood." For a moment, Crow's mask slipped. I saw surprise, then anger, then something else. Calculation. "You are mistaken," he said slowly. "I killed no one who was not a combatant." "She had a knife," I said, "but she was not attacking. She was defending herself, and you shot her anyway." Crow stepped closer. "You were 17 years old, scared, confused. You do not know what you saw. I know exactly what I saw. Then you are a liar, or a coward trying to rewrite history. I am a witness." Crow laughed. "A witness to what? A war? Wars are ugly, Brennan. People die. That is the nature of conflict. She was not a soldier. She was an enemy. And I had orders. Orders to murder pregnant women?" His hand moved to his belt, and for a moment I thought he would draw his pistol, but he stopped himself. His men shifted uneasily behind him. "You are making a very serious accusation," Crow said quietly, "one that could destroy your life. It is not an accusation. It is the truth. Prove it." "I will. In court." Crow stared at me for a long moment. Then he turned to his men. "Take her." 2 soldiers stepped forward. Ayanna did not resist. She walked down the porch steps and let them bind her wrists. But as they led her toward the horses, she looked back at me. I saw the message in her eyes. Trust the plan. Crow mounted his horse and looked down at me. "You have made a mistake, Brennan, a very costly one. We will see." He turned his horse and rode away, his men following, Ayanna in the center of the column. I watched until they disappeared over the ridge. Then I saddled Dust and rode for the canyon. Torres was already there, waiting with 3 men I did not recognize. They wore suits and carried notebooks. Reporters. "This is insane," one of them said when he saw me. "You expect us to confront a federal agent in the middle of nowhere?" "I expect you to do your job," Torres replied, "which is to report the truth." "What truth?" the man asked. "All we have is the word of one man against a decorated officer." "That is why we need more," Torres said. He looked at me. "Are you ready?" I nodded. "Then let us give them something they cannot ignore." We positioned ourselves at the narrowest part of the canyon, where the road was barely wide enough for 2 horses to pass side by side. Torres and I stood in the center. The reporters hid behind rocks, ready to document everything. Half an hour later, we heard hoofbeats. Crow's column appeared around the bend. When he saw us blocking the road, he raised his hand, and the riders stopped. He dismounted and walked forward, alone. "Move," he said. "Not until we talk," Torres replied. "I have nothing to say to you, Sheriff. This is federal business." "This is murder," Torres said, "and that makes it my business." Crow's expression darkened. "You are interfering with a lawful arrest. There is nothing lawful about what you did at Bosque Redondo." Crow looked past Torres, at me. "Is this your doing, Brennan? Did you convince the sheriff to join your delusion?" "It is not a delusion," I said, "and I am not the only witness." Torres pulled a folder from his coat. I have statements from 6 survivors. All of them describe the same incident. A woman named Kai, shot by an officer matching your description. Hearsay, Crow said. Inadmissible. Then explain this. Torres held up the necklace. The bone pendant glinted in the sunlight. Crow's face went pale. This belonged to Kai, Torres said. It has your initials carved into the back. How did that happen if you never met her? Crow said nothing. I stepped forward. You took it from her body, did you not? Kept it as a trophy. I found it, Crow said quietly. Years later, I did not know who it belonged to. Liar? Ayana's voice rang out. She stood in the center of the column, wrists still bound, but her voice clear and strong. You killed my mother, and you took that necklace while her blood was still wet. My aunt saw you wearing it 2 years later. She stole it back. And now everyone will know what you did. Crow turned to face her. You are a savage making wild accusations. No one will believe you. They will believe him, she said, pointing at me. And they will believe the sheriff. And they will believe the reporters hiding behind those rocks writing down every word you say. Crow spun around. The reporters stepped out into view, pencils moving across paper. His hand went to his pistol. Do not, Torres said, raising his own gun. For a long moment no one moved. Then Crow's shoulders sagged. I was following orders, he said quietly. That is all. I was following orders. Whose orders? Torres asked. The government, the army. Everyone wanted the Apache gone. I was just the one who had to do the work. Killing an unarmed pregnant woman is not work, I said. It is murder. Crow looked at me with something close to pity. You do not understand, Brennan. You never did. This land belongs to us, to people who can build, who can civilize. The Apache were in the way. What I did for progress. Before Torres could respond, a gunshot cracked through the canyon. Everyone froze. Ayana stood at the edge of the canyon wall, 20 feet above us, my rifle in her hands. Smoke curled from the barrel. The bullet had struck the rock 2 inches from Crow's boot. She lowered the rifle slightly, aiming now at his chest. The next one will not miss, she said, her voice carrying across the silence. Crow's hand moved toward his pistol. Torres shouted, Do not! But Ayana spoke first. Go ahead, draw it. Give me a reason. Crow's hand stopped. He stared up at her, his face pale. You killed my mother, Ayana said. You took her life, and you wore her necklace like a trophy. I could kill you now. End this. No trial, no lawyers, just justice. Then do it, Crow said, his voice shaking for the first time. If you are going to kill me, do it. Ayana's finger rested on the trigger. For a long moment, no one moved, no one breathed. Then she lowered the rifle. No, she said, I will not give you that mercy. You will stand trial. You will face a judge. You will hear your crime spoken aloud in front of everyone, and you will live with the shame for whatever years you have left. She slung the rifle over her shoulder and climbed down from the rocks. When she reached the canyon floor, she walked past Crow without looking at him. Torres exhaled slowly. Someone remind me never to cross her. He signaled to his deputies, who moved forward to arrest Crow. The federal soldiers looked at each other, uncertain. One of them stepped forward. You do not have authority to arrest a federal agent. I have a warrant, Torres said, pulling a paper from his coat. Signed by Judge Pitts 1 hour ago. Captain Silas Crow, you are under arrest for the murder of Kai of the Apache people. You will be tried in a court of law. Crow did not resist. He let the deputies bind his hands. As they led him away, he looked back at me one last time. You have destroyed yourself, Brennan. You know that, do you not? Maybe, I said, but at least I will sleep tonight. He was taken away. The reporters swarmed Torres, asking questions. The soldiers freed Ayana and rode off without a word. She walked over to me, rubbing her wrists where the ropes had cut into skin. It is done, she said. Not yet. We still have to testify. I know. We stood together in the canyon, surrounded by the ghosts of everything that had been lost. And for the first time in 19 years, I felt something other than guilt. I felt hope. The courtroom in Ash Ridge had not been used in 8 years. It sat above the general store, a single room with wooden benches and a judge's desk that wobbled when you leaned on it. Dust covered everything, thick as felt, and the windows were so grimy they turned the sunlight brown. But it was the only courtroom within 100 miles, and Judge Harold Pitts had made it clear that if we wanted justice, this was where we would get it. I stood outside the building 3 days after Crow's arrest, watching people file in. More people than I had ever seen in Ash Ridge. They came from neighboring towns, from ranches 50 miles away, from places I had never heard of. Word had spread fast. The newspapers had seen to that. Federal agent accused of murder. Witness breaks. 19 years of silence. Apache woman demands justice for mother's death. The headlines screamed from every paper in the territory. Some supported us. Most did not. But they all wanted to see what would happen when a white man accused another white man of killing an Indian. Ayanna stood beside me, wearing a dress Torres's wife had given her. Dark blue cotton, simple and modest, with a high collar and long sleeves. She had braided her hair and wore no jewelry except the bone necklace that had belonged to her mother. She looked dignified, respectful, exactly as Torres had instructed. "You do not have to testify," I said for the 3rd time that morning. "I can do this alone." She looked at me with those dark eyes that had seen too much suffering. "If you do it alone, they will call you a liar. They will say you are trying to protect yourself by blaming Crow. I have to testify. I have to make them see my mother as a person, not just another dead Indian." I nodded. I knew she was right. But I also knew what it would cost her to stand in front of a room full of white faces and relive the worst day of her life. Torres emerged from the building, his face grim. "The judge is ready. Crow is inside." His lawyer arrived this morning from Santa Fe. Crow has a lawyer? Of course he has a lawyer. He is a federal agent. The government is paying for his defense. Ayanna's jaw tightened. Of course they are. We climbed the stairs to the courtroom. The room was packed. Every bench filled, people standing along the walls. I saw faces I recognized from town, the blacksmith, the saloon keeper, women from the church, and I saw faces I did not recognize, men in suits with notebooks, more reporters. At the front of the room, behind a table, sat Silas Crow. He wore a clean shirt and a black coat, his hair combed back, his face calm. Next to him sat a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a leather briefcase, the lawyer. Crow looked at me as I walked down the aisle. No anger, no fear, just a slight smile, like he was amused by the whole proceeding. I wanted to cross the room and hit him, wanted to make him feel some of what Ayanna had felt, what her mother had felt. But I kept walking, kept my hands at my sides, kept my eyes forward. Torres led us to the front row. We sat on a hard wooden bench that creaked under our weight. Ayanna sat between Torres and me, her hands folded in her lap, her breathing steady. "All rise." The words came from a clerk I had never seen before, a young man with a nervous voice. Everyone stood as Judge Harold Pitts entered the room. Pitts was 70 years old if he was a day, bent and thin, with white hair and skin like old leather. But his eyes were sharp and clear, and when he looked out over the courtroom, people stopped whispering. He sat down heavily in his chair and motioned for everyone else to sit. "We are here today," he began, his voice surprisingly strong, "to hear evidence in the matter of the territory of New Mexico versus Captain Silas Crow, accused of murder in the 1st degree. The alleged crime took place 19 years ago at a location known as Bosque Redondo." He paused, looking around the room. "I want to make something clear before we begin. I do not care what color a man's skin is. I do not care what God he prays to or what language he speaks. In this courtroom, everyone is equal under the law. Is that understood?" A murmur ran through the crowd. Some people nodded. Others looked uncomfortable. "Good," Pitt said. "Then let us proceed. Sheriff Torres, call your first witness." Torres stood. "I call Cole Brennan to the stand." My legs felt like wood as I walked to the witness chair. The clerk handed me a Bible and asked me to swear to tell the truth. I placed my hand on the worn leather and spoke the words, my voice sounding hollow in my own ears. I sat down. Torres approached, holding a folder. State your name for the record. Cole Brennan. And where do you reside? Red Creek Ranch, 3 miles east of Ash Ridge. What is your occupation? Rancher. I raise horses and cattle. Torres nodded. And what was your occupation in 1864? I was a soldier in the United States Army. What was your rank? Private. And where were you stationed in September of 1864? Fort Sumner, near Bosque Redondo. The room went silent. Torres opened his folder and pulled out a yellowed piece of paper. This is a military roster from September 15, 1864. Is your name on this roster? He handed me the paper. I scanned the list and found my name. Brennan Cole, Private, 2nd Infantry. It is. Torres took the paper back. Can you describe what happened on September 15, 1864? We received orders to clear an Apache encampment near the Pecos River. The orders came from Captain Silas Crow. I pointed at Crow. He sat motionless, his expression unchanged. What did these orders entail? Torres asked. We were told to remove the Apache from the area by any means necessary. Crow said they were hostile, that they had been raiding supply lines. And were they? No. They were families, old people, children. They had set up camp near the river because they had nowhere else to go. The reservation was overcrowded. People were starving. Objection, Crow's lawyer stood. The witness is speculating about conditions he could not have known. Overruled, Pitts said. He was there. He can testify to what he saw. The lawyer sat down, his face tight. Torres continued. What happened when you reached the encampment? We surrounded it. Crow ordered us to burn the shelters and round up anyone who resisted. Most people ran. Some fought back. Did you participate in the burning? I did not answer right away. The truth sat in my throat like a stone. Yes, did you kill anyone? No. Why not? Because I could not. I saw what we were doing and I knew it was wrong. But I was 17 years old and I was afraid. Afraid of being punished. Afraid of being called a coward. So I did what I was told and I hated myself for it. The room was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Torres asked, did you witness Captain Crow kill anyone that day? Yes. Who? A woman. Her name was Kai. How do you know her name? Because her daughter told me. I looked at Ayanna. She sat perfectly still, her eyes on me. Torres held up the bone necklace. Do you recognize this? Yes, it belonged to Kai. How do you know? Because she was wearing it when she died. Tell the court what you saw. I closed my eyes for a moment and I was back there. The smoke, the screams, the heat of the flames. I saw a shelter on fire. I heard a child crying inside. I ran in and pulled the child out. A little girl, maybe 7 years old. Her mother was behind us, trying to follow. She had a knife, but she was not attacking anyone. She was just trying to protect her daughter. I opened my eyes and looked directly at Crow. Captain Crow saw her. He raised his pistol and shot her. One shot, through the chest. She fell. The little girl screamed. I handed the child to another woman who was fleeing, and I went back to my unit. Did you report what you had seen? No. Why not? Because I was afraid. And because I did not think anyone would care. Torres paused, then asked, did anyone in your life know what you had witnessed that day? I swallowed hard. The courtroom was silent. My wife, I said quietly. Lily. She found the necklace years after we married. It was in a box of my old things. She asked me where it came from. What did you tell her? I told her I did not remember, but she knew I was lying. She could always tell. Did she ask again? No, she just looked at me with this sadness, like she understood I was carrying something too heavy to share. I paused, my voice breaking slightly. A few weeks before she died, she said to me, Cole, if you have ever done something you cannot forgive yourself for, maybe it is time to stop running from it. The room was absolutely still. I think she knew, I continued. I think she wanted me to find the courage to tell the truth. But I could not. Not even for her. I was too afraid. Torres nodded slowly. And now? Now I am more afraid of staying silent. Torres walked back to his table and picked up another piece of paper. This is a diary entry from Private James Whitmore, who served in your unit. He died in 1872. Before he died, he gave this diary to his wife. She gave it to me last week. He read aloud. September 15th, 1864. We burned the Apache camp today. Captain Crow shot a woman who was running from a burning tent. She had a knife, but she was not fighting. Brennan pulled a child from the fire first. I do not know if the child survived. I do not know why we did this. God forgive us. Torres looked at the judge. This confirms Mr. Brennan's testimony. Crow's lawyer stood again. It confirms that someone was shot. It does not prove who pulled the trigger. Torres held up the necklace. Then perhaps Captain Crow can explain how his initials came to be carved into a necklace belonging to a woman he claims never to have met. All eyes turned to Crow. He sat very still, his hands folded on the table in front of him. Pitts leaned forward. Captain Crow, do you wish to respond? Crow stood slowly. He looked at me, then at Torres, then at the judge. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost gentle. I do not deny that I was at Bosque Redondo. I do not deny that people died. War is an ugly business, Your Honor. People die, sometimes innocent people. That is the nature of conflict. Pitts frowned. That is not an answer, Captain. Crow continued as if the judge had not spoken. I was following orders. Orders that came from the highest levels of government. We were told to pacify the Apache by any means necessary. I did my duty. Did your duty include murdering an unarmed woman? Torres asked. She was not unarmed. She had a knife she was using to defend herself and her child. She was a threat. She was a mother. Crow's mask finally cracked. His voice rose. She was an obstacle. All of them were obstacles. This land was being settled, Sheriff. Cities were being built, railroads, ranches, civilization, and the Apache stood in the way. What I did for progress, for the future. By killing women and children? Torres asked. By removing a threat to American expansion. The courtroom erupted. People shouted, some in support of Crow, others in outrage. Pitts slammed his gavel 3 times before order was restored. He looked at Crow with something close to disgust. Captain, you have just admitted in open court to killing a woman you deemed a threat. That is not self-defense. That is murder. It was war, Crow said. It was slaughter, Pitts replied, and I will not allow you to hide behind orders or ideology. You killed an unarmed woman, and you took a trophy from her body. That makes you a murderer. He turned to Torres. Call your next witness. Torres nodded. I call Ayanna to the stand. Ayanna stood and walked to the front of the room. She did not look at Crow as she passed his table. She sat in the witness chair, placed her hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Torres approached gently. State your name for the record. Ayanna. Do you have a family name? I did, but it was taken from me when my people were forced onto the reservation. Now I am just Ayanna. Where were you born? Near the Pecos River, in what you call New Mexico territory. Do you remember September 15th, 1864? Yes. What happened that day? My mother and I were camped near the river. Soldiers came. They burned our shelters. People ran. My mother put me inside our tent and told me to hide. Then the tent caught fire. What happened next? She paused, her hands gripping the arms of the chair. I could not breathe. The smoke was thick. I screamed for my mother. Then a soldier came in. He pulled me out. I saw my mother behind him. She was trying to follow. She had a knife, but only to cut through the burning fabric. She was not fighting. Did you see what happened to your mother? Ayanna's voice broke slightly. I saw Captain Crow shoot her. I saw her fall. The soldier who saved me, Mr. Brennan, handed me to my aunt. My aunt carried me away. I never saw my mother again. Torres held up the necklace. Is this the necklace your mother was wearing? Yes. How did you get it? My aunt took it from my mother's body. She kept it for 19 years. 3 months ago, before she died, she gave it to me. She told me who killed my mother. She told me to find justice. Why did you wait so long? Because I did not think anyone would listen. Because I did not think a white court would care about the death of an Apache woman. but Mr. Brennan convinced me that some people still believe in the law. She looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes I had not seen before. Trust. Torres finished his questioning. Crow's lawyer stood to cross-examine, but Pitts waved him off. "I have heard enough," the judge said. "Captain Crow, stand." Crow stood, his face pale now. Pitts spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "You have admitted to killing an unarmed woman. You have offered no acceptable justification. You have shown no remorse. Under the laws of this territory, I find you guilty of murder in the second degree." Gasps filled the room. Crow's lawyer started to object, but Pitts silenced him with a look. "You will be sentenced to 20 years in the territorial prison. You will serve every day of that sentence. And when you are released, if you are released, you will carry the mark of what you did for the rest of your life." He slammed the gavel. "Take him away." Deputies moved forward to bind Crow's hands. He looked at me one last time, and I saw nothing in his eyes. No anger, no fear, just emptiness. As they led him out, the crowd erupted again. Some people cheered, others protested. Reporters scrambled to take notes. Pitts turned to me. "Mr. Brennan, stand." I stood, my legs weak. "You have confessed to participating in the events at Bosque Redondo. You have admitted to burning shelters and following orders you knew to be wrong. Under normal circumstances, you would be charged as an accomplice." I waited, barely breathing. "But," Pitts continued, "you also saved a child's life. You came forward when no one else would. You chose truth over self-preservation. For that, I am reducing your sentence to 2 years, suspended on the condition that you perform 500 hours of community service and remain under supervision of Sheriff Torres." Relief flooded through me so suddenly I almost fell. "Do you accept these terms?" Pitts asked. "I do, Your Honor." "Then we are finished here." He stood and left the courtroom. People swarmed around us, asking questions, offering congratulations or condemnation. Torres pushed through the crowd and pulled us toward the door. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky red and gold. Ayanna and I stood on the steps of the courthouse, breathing in the cool evening air. "It is over," she said. "Not quite." I turned. Dakota stood at the edge of the street, half in shadow. He had been there the whole time, watching. He walked toward us slowly. When he reached the steps, he looked at Ayanna. "You were right," he said in Apache. I heard Torres translate later. "There is power in their law, sometimes." "Sometimes," Ayanna agreed. Dakota turned to me. "You kept your word. You stood in front of them and told the truth." I did. That does not erase what happened, but it is a beginning. He reached into his coat and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He handed it to Ayanna. She unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a small wooden carving, a horse in mid-gallop. "For the child," Dakota said. "My daughter. I am leaving her with you. I cannot care for her where I am going." "Where are you going?" Ayanna asked. "North. There are still free Apache in the mountains. I will find them." Ayanna's eyes filled with tears. "You do not have to run anymore." "Yes, I do. This is not my world. It is yours now." He touched her face gently, then turned and walked away. He did not look back. Ayanna held the carving close to her chest, watching him disappear into the gathering darkness. 6 months passed. The newspapers stopped writing about us after the first month. There were new scandals, new outrages, new stories to sell. Silas Crow became a footnote, a cautionary tale about the excesses of westward expansion. But in Ash Ridge, people remembered. Some of them stopped speaking to me, refused to sell me supplies, turned their backs when I walked down the street. They called me a traitor, a liar, a man who had betrayed his own kind for the sake of a dead Indian. Others nodded when they saw me, said nothing, but their eyes held something like respect. I learned to live with both. Ayanna stayed at the ranch. At first, she slept in the barn, as she had that first night. But as winter approached and the nights grew cold, I convinced her to take Lily's old room. She agreed, but only after she had cleaned it herself, scrubbed every surface, opened every window to let out the ghosts. The child, Dakota's daughter, arrived 3 weeks after the trial. A little girl, barely 3 years old, with dark eyes and a serious face. Her name was Kimmy. It meant secret. Ayanna cared for her with a tenderness I had not known she possessed. She taught her songs in Apache, showed her how to identify plants, how to move quietly through the woods, how to be strong. I watched them sometimes when they did not know I was looking, and I thought about the family I had lost. The child Lily and I had never had, the life we had planned that ended too soon. But I did not feel bitter. I felt grateful. Grateful that I had been given a second chance. Grateful that I had found the courage, however late, to do the right thing. My community service, as Torres called it, involved working at the reservation school 3 days a week, teaching Apache children to read and write English. It was hard work. Many of the children did not trust me. Their parents trusted me even less. But I kept showing up, kept trying. And slowly, over months, some of them began to listen. One day, a boy of about 10 raised his hand and asked, "Why should we learn your language? You took everything else from us." I did not have a good answer, so I told him the truth. Because the world is changing. Because knowing their language gives you power. Power to understand the laws they use against you. Power to speak back. Power to survive. He thought about that for a long time. Then he picked up his pencil and went back to work. In the spring, Ayanna and I planted a garden. Corn, beans, squash. She showed me how her people had grown crops in the desert, how to use every drop of water, how to read the land. We worked side by side in the hot sun, dirt under our fingernails, sweat on our faces. And sometimes, when the work was done, we would sit on the porch and watch the sunset. We did not talk much. We had said everything that needed to be said in the courtroom, but the silence between us was no longer heavy. It was comfortable, earned. One evening, as we watched the sky turn purple, Ayanna asked, "Do you regret it? Testifying?" I thought about the question. I thought about the friends I had lost, the reputation I would never get back, the looks I received in town. "No," I said. "I regret that it took me 19 years, but I do not regret doing it." She nodded. "Good." We sat in silence a while longer. Then she said, "I am going to stay here, at the ranch, if you will have me." I looked at her. "As what?" "As whatever you need. A partner, a friend. Someone who knows your worst and has chosen to stay anyway." I felt something loosen in my chest, something I had been holding tight for 3 years. "I will have you," I said, "in whatever way you want." She smiled, a real smile this time, not the cold, bitter smile she had given me in the beginning. "Then we are agreed." She stood and went inside to check on Kimmy. I stayed on the porch, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling for the night. The horses in the barn, the chickens roosting, the wind in the cottonwoods. For the first time since Lily died, I did not feel alone. 2 weeks later, Sheriff Torres came to the ranch. He rode up in the late afternoon, his face serious. "What is wrong?" I asked. "Nothing," he said. "I just wanted to let you know. Silas Crow died in prison yesterday." "How?" "Fever. At least, that is what the report says." I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no grief, just a kind of tired acceptance. "Did he say anything? Before he died?" Torres shrugged. "The guard said he asked for a priest, confessed his sins. Whether he meant it or not, I cannot say." "Does it matter?" Torres looked out at the land, at the fields where Ayanna and I had planted crops, at the house where Kimmy played. "I suppose not. The law dealt with him. That is all we can do." He rode away, and I went back to work. That night, Ayanna and I told Kimmy a story. It was a story Ayanna's mother had told her, about a girl who became a tree, so her family would always have shade. Kimmy listened with wide eyes, then asked if it was true. "Parts of it," Ayanna said. "The true parts are the ones about love and sacrifice. The rest is just a story." Kimmy thought about that, then snuggled into the blankets. She fell asleep quickly, Her small hand curled around the wooden horse Dakota had carved. Ayanna and I stepped outside. The moon was full, turning the land silver. "Do you think she will remember this?" Ayanna asked. "When she is grown, do you think she will remember that she was loved?" "She will remember," I said, "because we will tell her every day. We will tell her where she came from and why it matters. We will teach her to be strong and kind. And when she is old enough, we will tell her about her father, about your mother, about all the people who fought so she could live." Ayanna looked at me. "And what will we tell her about you?" I thought for a moment. "Tell her I was a coward who learned too late to be brave, but that I learned, and that matters." She reached for my hand. I took it, and we stood together under the stars. Two people who had been broken by history, who had found each other in the wreckage, who had chosen to build something new from the pieces. 1 year to the day after the trial, I rode into town to pick up supplies. The streets were busy, people moving about their business. I tied dust outside the general store and went inside. The shopkeeper, the same man who had pretended not to see Ayanna that day, looked up when I entered. "Brennan," he said, "what can I get you? Flour, sugar, coffee, nails?" He gathered the items without comment and set them on the counter. As I paid, he said, "I heard you are expanding the ranch, building another barn." "I am. And the Apache woman is still with you. Her name is Ayanna, and yes." He nodded slowly. "My daughter goes to the reservation school. She says you are a good teacher." "I do my best." He pushed the change across the counter. "For what it is worth, I think what you did took guts. Not many men would have stood up like that. I did not do it for recognition, I know. That is why it mattered." I took my supplies and left. Outside, I loaded them onto dust and prepared to ride home. But before I mounted, I looked around the square, the people going about their lives, the buildings that had stood for 20 years, the land stretching away to the horizon. This was home now, not perfect, not fair, but home. I rode back to the ranch as the sun climbed higher. When I crested the ridge and saw the house, I saw Ayanna in the garden, Kimmy beside her, both of them working the soil. They looked up when they heard me coming, and Kimmy waved. I waved back and rode down to meet them. That evening, we ate dinner together. Simple food, beans and cornbread and fresh greens from the garden. Kimmy told us about a bird she had seen, how it sang a song she had never heard before. Ayanna told her the Apache name for the bird and what its song meant. After dinner, we sat on the porch. Kimmy fell asleep in Ayanna's lap. I watched them, this woman who had every reason to hate me, but had chosen something else. This child who would grow up knowing a different world than her father had known. Ayanna looked at me. "What are you thinking?" "I was thinking about Lily, about what she would say if she could see this." "What would she say?" I smiled. "She would say I finally stopped running." "Are you happy?" Ayanna asked. "Here, with us." I considered the question honestly. I am not sure I know what happy means anymore, but I am at peace, and that is enough. She nodded. "It is enough for me, too." The next week, a man came to the ranch. I was mending fence when I saw him riding up the path. I recognized him. Thomas Garrett, a farmer who lived 5 miles east. We had never been friends, but we had never been enemies either. He dismounted and stood at the gate, hat in his hands. "Brennan," he said. I set down my tools and walked over. "Garrett." I came to apologize. I did not know what to say. He continued, "For the things I said about you, about her, about what you did, I was wrong. What changed your mind?" "My daughter, she is 8. She goes to the reservation school now. She came home last week and told me about her teacher. A white man, she said, who is teaching the Apache children to read and write. Not just in English, in their own language too." He looked at me directly. "She said you told them, your language is not a burden. It is a weapon. Learn English to survive in their world. But never forget your own words because that is who you are." I had said that. I did not know anyone had repeated it. "My daughter asked me why I never taught her anything like that," Garrett said, and I did not have an answer. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a cloth sack. "I brought you seed corn. For next season. It is not much, but it is all I have to offer." I took the sack. It was heavy, full. "You did not have to do this." "Yes, I did." He put his hat back on. "What you are doing matters, Brennan, even if some of us were too stupid to see it at first." He rode away before I could respond. That evening, I told Ayanna about the visit. She smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "You are changing them," she said. "I am just teaching children to read." "No, you are showing them that a man can admit he was wrong. That is harder than any lesson in a book." One evening a few weeks later, as Ayanna and I sat on the porch watching Kimmy chase fireflies in the yard, she turned to me. "Do you think we are doing the right thing, raising her here, in this world?" "I think we are doing the only thing we can," I said. "We are teaching her to survive, to be strong, to remember where she came from while also building a future." Ayanna was quiet for a moment. Then she reached over and took my hand. It was the first time she had done that. Her hand was warm, calloused from work, real. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For not giving up on yourself, on this, on us." I squeezed her hand gently. "I should be thanking you. You gave me a reason to stop running." We sat in silence, hands joined, watching Kimmy run through the grass. And for the first time since Lily died, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. We sat in silence as the stars came out one by one. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. The wind moved through the grass, carrying the smell of sage and rain that might come tomorrow. I thought about Bosque Redondo, about the men I had served with, the choices I had made, the woman I had failed to save. I thought about Silas Crow, dying alone in prison, and whether his final confession had meant anything. I thought about all the ways a life could be wasted, and all the ways it could be redeemed. And I thought about the future, about teaching Kimmy to ride, about planting more fields with Ayanna, about growing old on this land, doing work that mattered, living with the ghosts but not being haunted by them. The moon rose higher. Ayanna shifted Kimmy in her arms and stood to carry her inside. Before she went, she turned back to me. "Cole?" she said. "Yes." "Thank you for what?" "For staying, for fighting, for being the man you should have been 19 years ago." I did not know what to say, so I just nodded. She went inside with Kimmy. I stayed on the porch a while longer, watching the land settle into darkness. I thought about the wooden sign I had ordered from the carpenter in town. It would arrive next week. It would say, in carved letters, "Brennan and Ayanna Ranch. Founded 1884. A new name, a new beginning, not a forgetting, never that, but a way forward." I stood and stretched, feeling the pull of old wounds and new scars. Then I went inside, to the house that was no longer just mine, to the family I had never expected to find. Behind me the door closed softly. The stars wheeled overhead, and the land, ancient and patient, held us all. The end.